Hello, it's welcome to Radio FM 88 Australia, and we're broadcasting from Brisbane, Australia. And it's been our privilege to have Carol Poole, who happens to be based in Glastonbury, and she stepped in after 7 o'clock due to a technical issue with our previous guests that we had all lined up. And it's our thanks to Carol for doing exactly that, bringing forth her wisdom and knowledge. And I'm going to pass you over to our co-host in the UK, none other than Andrena. Welcome to you, Andrena. Welcome to you, Carol.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Dreaming the New Dream. And I'd like to thank Carol for stepping in at the very last minute, because it was the last minute hiccup. It wasn't happening. So, and thankfully, but she's only in the next room. So welcome, Carol.
Thank you, Sunshine.
So lots of people know Carol's my sister, and that she's a poet. She's the Dragon Lady. Or she's called the Glastonbury poet, and all sorts of other things. But she has a wonderful way with words, creating ceremonies and stories and all sorts of wonderful things. So I think over to you, Carol. Where would you like to start? Thank you for coming in at such short notice.
Well, thank you. And Jeffrey just said something about last minute. And it's so funny that you generally call me lastminute.com.
I do.
So I am totally unprepared, but we just go with the flow. And for anybody listening who's not in Glastonbury at the moment, Glastonbury is an absolutely magical place. And I am blessed to be living here. Hang on, I'm just trying to get this positioned a bit better. So I'm lined up with my beautiful image behind me. So I'm going to start. If you haven't heard it before, this is my Glastonbury poem, which is gone around the world without me. And it's one I quite often get asked to recite to people. And I did produce it some years ago as a poster, which I'll show you. I'm blotting out the website info at the moment because that website doesn't exist anymore. But that was what I produced at the time, with the images. So the poem is in the middle with the images around the outsides. And it was just something that came to me about, 2011, I think this copy was printed. And it was all the questions that people ask about Glastonbury. And it's well, not all the questions, there's always more questions. But I'm just going to recite it from memory, as I often do. So here we go. And I'm sure Jeffrey's got some images to put up to go with it. Glastonbury has a history of magic, myth, and mystery. But is it fact? Or is it fiction? Does its water cure affliction? Did Jesus come and sweetly smile on what was known as Avalon's Isle? Did his uncle plant the thorn which flowers every Christmas morn? Did an ancient ghostly hand map the ruins on Abbey Land? Is King Arthur buried here with his Lady Guinevere? Is Excalibur, the famous sword, part of a buried treasure hoard? Was the Lady of the Lake a Glastonbury goddess, for goodness sake? Are the eggstones really portals that hide the fairies from us mortals? And have the fairies got a door to a realm beneath the Tor? Have they got a palace there with a king and a golden chair? A Gog and Magog wise old sages guarding the Tor as oaks of ages? What stories could the yew trees tell in the garden at Chalice Well? Do the ley lines form a grid? And where's the abbey's treasures hid? And is there a dragon with a tail watching over the Holy Grail? There's many a legend and many a tale, and lots of lovely goods for sale. Crystals, wands, and so much more, and pictures of the mystical tour. So come to Glastonbury and stay a while. Feel the magic. It'll make you smile.
Thank you.
And there are some images here. Now, for example, you might have heard me mention the eggstone. There are some eggstones in Glastonbury, and I don't know if you can see an image there beneath the picture of the Tor there, but that is an egg stone, and they're quite peculiar things. They look like dragon eggs. They're considered to have magical, mystical properties. There's one in the grounds of the Glastonbury Abbey, and it's just at the back of the abbot's kitchen. And the abbot's kitchen itself is the only building that was left standing after the what they call the dissolution of the monasteries. And the word dissolution always sounds to me like it's a dispersion. It's like, sounds like a dissoluble aspirin that you put in water. And it's nothing of the sort. The whole place was massacred, ransacked, and it was left over time just as a complete ruin. And the stones even got taken by the local people when it was just left in ruins. And the stones actually form part of the buildings of the town. The stones sometimes found themselves in the roads. So what was the spiritual sanctuary centre of Glastonbury now, if you consider that essence is in the stones, is actually permeating the whole town. And it's quite interesting because that spiritual essence goes far and wide. And it has been said that whatever happens in Glastonbury reverberates around the world. And I know one of the things that Jamie was going to be talking about in his presentation was how Glastonbury is connected with other sacred sites, and not just on a mythological basis, but on a numerical and a frequency basis as well. So I'm really hoping that he gets the technological problem sorted out so that we can tune in to what he was going to be talking about. Other images that I've got on here are the sacred, I'm just going to pick this out there, and I'm sure Jeffrey's got an image of the well, the chalice well with the Vesica Pisces image there as the lid, which I believe that was developed by Frederick Bligh Bond. Now, Frederick Bligh Bond was the architect who was in charge of discovering the ruins when the church was, the abbey was actually bought by the Church of England. And that's an interesting story in itself, because it was once owned by various people after the dissolution, but it was also owned by a family called Austin. And it was the Austin family who actually had very strong links with Australia. And in the grounds of the abbey, you'll see one half of a whalebone jaw, which is forming an arch. I don't know what happened to the other side of it. But I do know that the Austins had a very, very strong link with Australia, which is why in some places in Australia, you will find places named Avalon and Glastonbury. And it was the Austins who were apparently responsible for taking the rabbits from here into Australia. And they also brought back kangaroos at the time. There seems to be a definite absence of kangaroos here, but I'm told that the rabbits in Australia, and again, there's another interesting link with a film called The Rabbit Proof Fence. And I think I've got a copy of the DVD on my bookshelf there. But The Rabbit Proof Fence was a story about some young Aboriginal or original Australian girls who were part of what was known as the stolen generation, who were taken from their natural families and put into institutions by the English and the white settlers and so on. And it's a dreadful, shocking story. But they managed to escape, and they knew that their home was somewhere close to the rabbit-proof fence. And so they walked, I think it was about 900 miles or 900 kilometers, following the rabbit-proof fence to get back home. Let me just get that and show that to you, because it's really important.
I took a picture of the egg stone at the Abbey the other day, but I don't know. I could have a quick look to see.
I have it. Here it is.
All right.
All right, very good.
Yeah. Now, so if the rabbits hadn't been in Australia, there would not have been a rabbit-proof fence. Hang on, where I just got to angle it to
The opposite side.
I know it foxes me every time. So that's the rabbit-proof fence, and it is based on a true story. And on the back it says, featuring the Golden Globe nominated score by Peter Gabriel, a powerful true story of hope and survival, and has met with international acclaim at a time when it was Australian government policy to train Aboriginal children as domestic workers and integrate them into white society. Young Molly Craig decides to lead her little sister and cousin in a daring escape from their internment camp. Molly and the girls, part of what would become known as Australia's Stolen Generation, must then elude the authorities on a dangerous 1,500-mile adventure along the rabbit-proof fence that bisects the continent and will lead them home. And it's an extraordinary story. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. So
Have you seen it, Jeff?
What, sweetie?
I wondered if Jeff had seen it.
Yeah, the movie. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. I've just quickly sent you in Messenger the picture of the eggstone or dragonstone that I took outside the Abbey the other day. So I don't know if you want to stick that up as well.
Okay, radio. So carry on.
Yeah. So just again, talking about the Abbey, it was sold in 1907, and I haven't got them with me at the moment, but I do have a copy of the sales particulars, and it's a book about an A3 size, and it was actually the sale of the Abbey house, and it was sold with an interesting ruin in the garden. And maybe I can find that and do another talk for you another time about that. But the interesting ruin in the garden is what, of course, is the ruins of Glastonbury Abbey, which sits in about 16 acres now. And it's an absolutely lovely place to just go and have a wander. I've got a season ticket, so I can go in and out as I choose and just enjoy the trees, the peace and the serenity of the place. But I think it sold for about £30,000 at the time, if I remember rightly. And as moving forward, as I mentioned, Bly Bond just now, he was the architect who was put in charge of looking at the ruins and discovering the different walls and what was where in the cloister and things like this. And he actually discovered many of the parts of the ruins by spiritual means. He was working with a medium called Captain John, I think it was John or James, John Allen Bartlett. And he would do automatic writing. And they started to get communication from one of the monks that lived in the abbey at that time, called Johannes. And he would tell them where to look. And by that means, they found the missing Edgar Chapel. They discovered the Loreto Chapel and other areas that they would not have known where to look had they not had this spiritual guidance. But at the time, the church very much frowned on the method that was used. And when they discovered that how these ruins were discovered, then Bly Bond was dismissed. And his keys were taken from him. And so that's part of the hidden story of Glastonbury.
Okay, just hang on a second.
Right.
Carry on. I just went get the eggstone come up.
All right. There's lots of tunnels, isn't there? And there's still hidden treasure to be found, which we're still looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people years ago used to, there's the eggstone at the Abbey. And some people think they've got magical properties. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But if you believe something strongly enough, you can often make it happen. And I've written loads of stories about how the magic is just in Glastonbury, and you can just sort of tap into it. It's said to be a place where certain ley lines cross, and there's said to be a dragon energy line that runs through this. And I think one of the dowsers, I'm sure it was Rory Duff, that said there were about 7 dragon lines throughout the world, and there was one that runs through Glastonbury. And I'm not an expert on this, but it said that if some of the ley lines cross or resonate at certain times, the power is even greater. And I recall reading some years ago about the film director John Boorman, who apparently had walked up the Tor. I think this was in the 70s, and come down with the idea for the film Excalibur. Maybe, maybe not. But if you happen to be in Glastonbury at a time when these energies are more magnified than normal, you can expect the miraculous to happen. We're working on that one, aren't we, Andrew?
We are. Oh my God.
But I mean, there are some beautiful places here. I mean, the Chalice Well Garden is a piece. I think it's called a World Peace Centre, and it's absolutely stunning, And what you can see now that Jeffrey's put up is the tower. That's what they call St. Michael's Tower. And that's all that remains. The rest of what was the small church behind it came down in an earthquake. I think that was around about 1275, but the tower still stands. Personally, I think it might be a lift shaft that goes either up or down, but hey, that's just another of my stories. And maybe it keeps down the as a Christian building, and Christian buildings were often put on places of power points and previous pagan temples and druidic temples and so on. And I do sometimes wonder if it's on top of the Tor. So it's effectively keeping down maybe the pagan beliefs, the druid beliefs. Who knows? Maybe it's keeping down the dragon energy. Maybe there really is a dragon under the Tor, as I've written.
Would you like to read your dragon, seeing as you're mentioning the dragon?
Well, as you know, I'm a great dragon fan. And this, again, is a poem that I wrote years ago. And I'm going to show you the image, again, covering up the website because it doesn't exist now. But this was Dragon Spirit Rising. And if you look at the top, now, I've got a picture of one of my dragons that were made by Seamus Joy. If I hold that up close, I've got 2 dragons made by Seamus. He's an amazing local wizard. And on the other side of this is the photo that you took, which you very kindly allowed me to use. And it was a dragon in a cloud with a rainbow running through it. Can you see that from here? I know you've got one as well, haven't you, Jeffrey?
Yep.
Yeah. And the image in the middle is of a dragon spirit rising from the Tor. Now, that was a painting on glass by Seamus's daughter, Tara Joy. She's an incredible artist. And it just seemed to fit the poem. So it was a little bit of a rousing one then, so I won't read it with the usual verve, shall we say. But this was called Dragon Spirit Rising. When the dragons awake from the dream time and are seen on Glastonbury Tor, the power will return to the people and we will be mighty once more. If you hear the dragons calling, if you feel them in your heart, if you've a fire in your belly, it's time to make a start. It's time to set the dragons free as guardian spirits of all, of fire, water, earth, and air. They're waiting for our call. These protectors of the planet are ready to come to our aid, bringing their mighty power so we won't be afraid. Dragon power is now moving through air and sea and land. With it, we'll get off our knees and we will make a stand. It's time to honor Mother Earth and really start to care for all her living beings and land and water, trees and air. It's time for us to put a stop to those who live by greed, like banks and corporations who steal from those in need. And those who harm the planet and only serve themselves, selling highly suspect stuff from many market shelves. And those who feed us lots of lies about our foreign friends, wanting us to hate them because it serves their ends. So let's call on dragon power to come to our assistance. Let truth and might and honor stand for no resistance. Together we can do it, if united we will be. All as one will get things done, then we will all be free. So breathe the power of dragons, be full of dragons' fire. Be true to you in all you do, and all will be inspired. The dragon spirit is rising, it's calling us to stand. And let the ancient mighty wisdom once more rule o'er the land.
Very good.
Thank you. And that was written in 2011. So, yes. And there's so many stories about the elementals here and, you know, the fairy realms and the dragons. And it's a phenomenal place. If you tap into the wisdom and the knowledge and just the stories, it can open up so many different more dimensions to what's going on, rather than just sitting at home and watching the news, the doom and gloom, the usual soap operas and so on. You know, going out and connecting with nature and just seeing and being is totally different. And there's one lovely gentleman that I've met recently in Glastonbury who's he just talks about nature in a way that I've never heard. And he says, now that dragon is outside the Library of Avalon. Some wonderful images there. And it really is a place of magic. But I'm going back to this lovely old friend that I've met. And he says that if you step into a woodland or a forest, just step in and just pause and let the land welcome you. Don't go rushing in. He said, if you go rushing in, you'll hear a blackbird sound an alarm. And it was quite interesting that I went somewhere yesterday with a friend of mine, and we walked into part of the actually the wildlife area, the Abbey at the back, and you can sense a change from one area to the next. And as we stepped into this, and I'd forgotten that rule about pausing, and seconds later I heard a blackbird cry out, you know, the shrill whistle, and it was like, wow, it really is amazing. And this lovely friend whose name is Nick was saying about the mycelium structure that connects the land, the trees, and everything. So everything has a resonance and it sends an instant message around. And we've also been watching some programs recently on YouTube about this amazing lady called Dr. Suzanne Surmand, I think her name is. And she studied this mycelium structure beneath the trees that links things, and they've done so many literally scientific tests seeing how the trees communicate with one another and look after the seedlings. And it's just like, wow, there is so much natural knowledge and ancient wisdom that we can tap into if we only, you know, open the door to it and let the knowledge in. That's Abbey House there. The back. That's an amazing building. And that was built with stone from the Abbey. So again, it just permeates the whole area. So And that's you can see in the background the abbot's kitchen, and I forget what this was part of. They've got scaffolding around this other bit, but it always looks to me as if it was the guardian spirit looking out.
It's the animal, isn't it?
Yeah. Some of the nose of it seems to have come off now, and they've got scaffolding around that. But the abbot's kitchen is apparently something that is called a double lantern building, as you can see from the top. And when you go in there, there are sort of like fires in each corner, but the acoustics in there are extraordinary. If you stand in the middle and you make a sound, you tone a note or something, it reverberates, it really echoes. And how they ever use that as a kitchen with the noise of possibly pots and pans, I really don't know. I think it might have had another more sacred use, but that's only my thoughts. And there you're seeing the tour from the bird's eye view. And when you're up there, sometimes the whole area around is surrounded by mists, and they call it the mists of Avalon. And it almost looks as though you're on top of a mountain surrounded by sea. And at one time in the distant past, Glastonbury would have been at times surrounded by floods and shallow seas. And there was an ancient canoe that was dug out of the peat bogs. And this ancient canoe is a very, very long oak log, which until recently could be seen in an annex room at the back of the old tourist information place, which is called the Tribunal. That's the moat around Wells Cathedral there.
That's what I thought.
And the Tribunal is an old building in Glastonbury. I think that goes back to about 14 or 1500. And there is a room at the back where they have this old canoe, which is about 2,000 years old. And as I said, it was dug out of the nearby peat bogs at Godney, which was just outside of Glastonbury. And again, the word Godney, there are so many legends about visits from holy people, such as Joseph of Arimathea, who, the legend has it, brought his nephew Jesus to the area. And many people believe that Jesus was taught here by the Druids. Whether or not that's legend, I don't know. But there's a nearby village called Priddy, which is on the Mendips, which is not far from Cheddar. It's not far from Wells. And they had an old legend there that used to say, when our Lord was in Priddy. And when you think that much of our storytelling was handed down by oral tradition and song and so on. So there's often a grain of truth that runs through things. And we know that the traders in tin and things like that would come across the seas. There are people that think Somerset was named after the Sumerians. I don't know. I'm just gathering together some of the legends and the stories that come together. So I'm just, as I've stood in it, very short notice, I won't be able to find one, which is, I don't know if it's here, but I've got one about St. Cuthbert on the tour. No, I'm not sure I can find that at the moment. No, you're going to have to invite me back for another one, but it's the magical time when St. Cuthbert was invited into fairyland and then sprinkled holy water around and then found himself outside on the grass. So, and I can't remember the poem straight off the top of my head. So you're going to have to ask me back for that one.
Right.
I'm going to pause for breath for a minute.
Right. So obviously Jeff's showing lots of photos, and some of these, where's that one you've got up there now? Is that Priddy one?
Priddy, yeah.
Yeah, because some of them I thought, God, I don't recognize that tree. And of course, some of them are like quite old, like time's moved on, so that they've all changed and grown. So yeah, so what let me think. We've touched the tour, we've touched the abbey, Chalice Well. What about the almshouses, the Magdalena chapels?
Well, Andrew's got a question there.
All right, Carol, have you had any personal supernatural experiences at the tour?
That's why here went curly.
That's putting me on the spot, isn't it?
Yeah, but well, you've got curly hair, Jeff said.
I've often seen lights around, and I've been privileged to be there at sometimes when the light from the sun, if you got there at sunrise and you can see the light would come through the openings of the abbey, and I've taken photographs, and it's really, the rays of the light have been phenomenal. And I know you've taken photographs of orbs, haven't you, Andrena, up there?
I am, yeah.
Well, I think the most supernatural experiences are some of the strange people that you meet going up and down. It is a magical place. You can see I think you can see 6 or 7 counties.
7, I think it is.
Yeah, and there is something, it's a bit of an effort to get up there. I think it's about 500 feet. No, is it 500? No, it can't be 500 feet above sea level, can it? Or I forget what the actual measure is, but it is a little bit of a hike up. And there is an egg stone on the side of the tour, which is quite difficult to find. But when I was looking for my abode here again, because I've lived here on and off for a number of years, and I knew I needed to be back. And I was putting the feelers out to find out, okay, where do I need to be? And one of my friends said, you need to go and sit on the egg stone the tour. So okay, I'll do whatever it is, and do you think, I mean, I've been there before, but sometimes it's really curious, you can't quite find where you're going. So and it was a wet and windy day, and I couldn't find it, and that was like, okay, I'm going the wrong way, and so on. So I went and sat on the one at the back of the abbey, and within a very short time, my place where I am at the moment, thank you,
Right, we're going around, and then when we finish, I'll sit on this stone.
Yeah. So I have had some strange supernatural experiences, but not necessarily relating to Glastonbury, but or not specifically the tour. But there are people who've had visitations, especially in some of the places around, that have got a really strong energy of ghostly sightings. And there have been people that have seen and heard extraordinary things. And as I said, there are times when, if you like to say, the veil is thinner, that's when the communication comes through. And sometimes you just have to sit quietly and be in a receptive state, and you'll be amazed at what information comes to you.
Right, I'm just going to shut the window a minute. They're taking the scaffolding down, so I'm just going to mute.
Okay, so don't forget we've got the chalice wells and the white well. Chalice is the red well.
Yeah, the White Spring is quite a magical place as well. That I think that is, it one time became a reservoir for the water companies, but before that, I'm told that it was a cascade of lovely little waterfalls and so on that came down that hill. And of course, around Chalice Hill is where Dion Fortune lived at one time. Now, she was a very famous author and initiator of esoteric mysteries and things like that. So Glastonbury has a long line of drawing in people who are attuned to the mysteries of this world. As you can see, some of the symbolism that you're showing there of and it really truly is a magical place.
And you're not meant to take pictures, are you, in the White Springs?
No, they don't seem to like that. I'm not quite sure what, the reason is behind that. But, and that's, you're showing some of these lovely images of Chalice Well. And of course, Chalice Well has the 2 streams of water, what they call the White Spring and the Red Spring. And I think the Red Spring is iron rich. We were talking about the red spring coming from the Lion's Head fount, weren't we, yesterday, Dream?
Yeah.
And when, as it comes out, if you have two glasses that are put right next to each other and the water comes down right as on the two, the water spirals a different way in each of them, doesn't it? Now that might be a natural phenomenon, I don't know, but it's another of those things that you notice that is slightly more magical.
Yeah, and I did do a little video of that, but I'm not sure if I can quickly find it. Just bear with me a moment.
I mean, going back to the my Glastonbury poem, which, as I said, I did years ago, that I saw those lovely little flowers. I have no idea what they were called. Hang on, I've got to go the opposite. Right, I've got my finger on it now. There. No. This is so disorientating, you know, but I thought they looked like little fairy castles. And I thought, oh, you know, so they had to go in as well.
Right, search videos.
I remember going into the White Well with Willem and toning in there. The acoustics was just absolutely amazing. Just had to find the sweet spot.
Exactly. And we did that once in the Abbott's Kitchen with a group of people that was there you go, Baker, absolutely. And
because I've actually gone and toned in the Abbott's Kitchen, so you do have to find the sweet spot. Once you do, it just resonates. Really fantastic.
Yeah, and that was extraordinary. We did that with Christian Kyriakou, didn't we, Dream, with a group of people?
Yeah.
And they had a medieval fair recently I think it was in May, in the Abbey, and they had Tom Billings Recorder Quartet in there playing, and that was magical. And the sound, again, it has a different quality in there. I don't know enough about sound and acoustics, but there is something truly magical.
We have to go in there and do a bit more toning and get a few people to come together and say, let's all meet at 3 and then just do some toning. So
yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, so all our toners in Glastonbury, come to the Abbey.
Yeah, come and get in tone. You know, I often think, you know, when you look at the word the biblical or the religious word atonement, I think sometimes it is either at one-ment or a tonement.
Or tone me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one. Tone me, you know. And I mean, we see, I see magic in words constantly. I mean, I love the words like fundamental is not enough fun and too much mental. But hey, that's just my take on things.
Yeah, I'm going to say about the mental, but we won't go there.
No, perhaps not.
Oh, God. Right, what else can we cover in Glastonbury? So we still haven't spoke about Magdalena Chapel.
Oh no, you said about the almshouses. Now,
yeah,
I think
there's a little mini museum in there, isn't there?
and I think if my memory serves me rightly, the almshouses, I was going to say the more modern ones, I think they were endowed by the Austen family. But going back before then, if you've got a picture of what used to be the dwellings, they used to have dwellings for men and women back to about the 1500s, I think, which is where the Magdalene Chapel is now. They had 2 lines with a little garden in the middle. And they're just, I think they're stone buildings, and they're just almost like a one-room. Yeah, well done. I don't know if you've got any images of the inside, but it's almost like a one room with a sort of like a bed area over the top and so on. And that's the Magdalene Chapel. And that, of course, is where we had a little ceremony to honour our mum, didn't we, Dreen, after her passed on. And in fact, in answer to one of Andrew's questions earlier, what we did with our mum's remains, we mixed them with a little bit of glitter and we actually sprinkled her off the tour. Or what was left of her body, should we say. I'm sure she's elsewhere, But and that's another magical place there.
And that's a nice place for toning in there as well, isn't it? That gives a lovely sound. And I think they do have toning groups, don't they?
I don't think that's it. Where's that?
That's the Catholic church, isn't it? Next door, the reef.
Yeah. I thought that was much too big to be that little chapel.
What do you call those flowers, by the way?
They look like pansies.
Pansy.
Eh?
Pansy.
By the look of it.
Pansy, okay.
But they got lovely faces on them. And there's a little finger labyrinth as well at the Magdalene Chapel.
The entrance, isn't it, as you go in.
Mm-hmm. And there's a labyrinth in the ground at St. John's Church that that people like to walk around. And the area outside St. John's Church, which is halfway up the high street, tends to be quite a gathering place for people. And I have a theory that and sometimes it's some of the more needy people, should we say, in the community. And I have a theory that there's almost like an ancient pathway, because the entrance to the Abbey would have been opposite there. We know the entrance to the Abbey now elsewhere, but I believe the main entrance to the Abbey would have been where the co-op is now, on that side, along there. And if you think that animals have a migratory path that they follow for sort of like, generations and generations, and birds will follow the same path back to their breeding grounds and so on. And I kind of think maybe there is an invisible path that draws people to go that way, because that would have been the main entrance to the Abbey, where people went to receive alms, hospitality, food. The monks in the Abbey had a hospital garden and things like that. And it just sort of seems to me, it makes complete sense that's it. Absolutely, Jeffrey. That's the St. John's Church. And on the other side, as you're swinging round, there would have been the main entrance to the Abbey. And in fact, just as you're going down a little bit there, there's an entrance there, a little pathway.
That's it.
Yeah, and there is actually a gate, a side gate there, which they occasionally open up when they have a big event to allow people to go out from there. But otherwise, the entrance is further down on just around the corner.
It's quite a grim-looking photo, isn't it, that one?
And further down, where you've got the assembly rooms,
they're all old pictures. Gosh.
Yeah, they are, aren't they?
Yeah.
But it's really interesting, the stories that have been told about the place and the hidden history. Very little traffic about, so it was either a very long time ago or after one of the events where they closed the street for the Glastonbury Carnival, for example. And that's an amazing event in November. Yeah, that's Magdalene Street.
Okay, sorry. We want to go into...
And it's all within a very short walking distance, isn't it? If you've got for one end and then you come down in town and you've got all the shops, everything. It's like you don't have to go far.
No, you can from the main car park in Glastonbury. You can get a little bus that would take you up to the Tor. Not up the Tor, it will just take you to the foot of the Tor, and you have to walk the rest of the way. But this is the main entrance to the Abbey these days. And that's the town hall next door to it.
This is where you get the bus.
Yeah, that's where you get the little bus. And it's only, it's not that far. I mean, as the dragon flies, it's seconds, but obviously by road it's not.
Is it Burns of Bread still got their little shop there as well as one in the high street?
They still do their pastries and so on there. I mean, until quite recently, the coaches used to stop and pull up there, and everybody used to get off in town. But the coaches now are not allowed to. They've got to be they've got to go round the back to a car parking behind North Lode Street, and you'd be amazed how many people just get the coaches go the wrong. Well, sometimes they go the wrong way and they can't find the road to it. So
yeah, those pictures look really not very bright and
no. Now hang on, I'm just right. Yeah, as you're going along where you are, this is brilliant actually.
That's the goddess house there.
Yeah. Before it was right now, just about where that car is. Yeah, now that's where the Catholic Church is. So if you go a little bit past that, sorry, there's some drilling going on outside. Right, a little bit more. Right, now just where you can see the white face building, that's it. That's the entrance down that lane to the Magdalene Chapel. And most people don't even know it's there.
No.
You know, so you just go down that, and it's a beautiful little place.
It's definitely well worth a visit.
Yeah.
I'm doing some toning in there. But they do have some groups different times of the week, don't they? And then, of course, you've got the Abbey's got some events.
What's that, Jeffrey?
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say the Abbey's.
And we'll go up to Witherill Hill, eh?
Witherill Hill.
Yeah. That's another right. I can't find that one at the moment, but it started off in that direction is Witherill Hill, where some of the legends begin with Joseph of Arimathea, a merchant who traded in tin. And it goes on like that, but I can't remember the rest at the moment.
Yeah. Wearyl, not Witherill.
Yeah, Wearyl. Witherill.
Yeah.
And when you sit there, you've got a nice view up to the Tor.
It's funny, you know, right from the middle of the town centre, you can't see the Tor.
You can't.
And we've just had a pilgrim weekend here in the Abbey. So
that was it. Had the Anglicans on the Saturday and the Catholics on the Sunday. And it's always interesting. There are so many different processions that people come and different pilgrimages and so on. And it really does attract people from all over the world. And I know that we've got so many different conferences. We have the Glastonbury Symposium that covers all sorts of things from UFO, and I know Mary Rodwell has spoken at the conference there before, and I know she's been on your show. There's megalithomania. There's all sorts of unusual things that most people don't know they don't know. So it can be quite an educational place. I mean, they have a goddess conference, which I think this year is in August, and women will come from around the world, and so will men. I don't have a list of all the things in front of me to tell you what's on, but I mean, they have regular fairy events and markets and so on. And there are some incredible crafters and artists in this town, and the musicians. And for anybody who loves music, I mean, one of my favorite places on a Sunday for music is the what's now called the Queen of Cups. It used to be known as the Hawthorns, but they have some of the best local musicians all just get together and jam, and they take it in turns, and how they all manage to sort of like just miraculously be in harmony together and play is just awesome. I love it.
I think we've nearly covered all of Glastonbury now, haven't we?
Oh, there's always more, but I think
but the main, I mean, the Georgian Pilgrim is another famous place, isn't it?
Yeah, that's one of the oldest public houses in the country, and it was said to have been built so that instead of the I mean, I might be wrong on this, and if I am, somebody will correct me, but because they had so many guests at the Abbey to look after, if they built a hostelry, then they could, you know, some of them could stay there, so that they only really looked after the important guests at the Abbey. And so that's, I believe, the legend of the origin of the Georgian Pilgrim. And there were tunnels, apparently, that would link the one place to the other, so that people could potentially come and go without being seen. And there are lots of tunnels around, and I think you mentioned about that earlier, and I have heard some of the older residents tell me that years ago they would, you know, they would be walking up the Tor, and suddenly, you know, there'd be at times sheep on the Tor, or they would take their dogs walking, and some, you know, a little tunnel would appear, or some, you know, an animal would suddenly fall down a shaft that they didn't know was there. And some of the ancient stories, and I have read this in print, that at one time some of the monks went through a tunnel that was under the Tor, and it said that some of them came out completely mad, some of them never came out at all, and some of them were struck dumb. So who knows what lurks beneath? I don't know.
Yeah, interesting, eh?
But, you know, where fact and fiction meet, you tend to get faction. I don't know. So it's you just have to have an open mind, and what you might think is too absurd one day, actually, you might think, you know what, there is some truth in that. I mean, you know, people have talked about seeing elementals and fairies, and you do sometimes see ordinary people walking up and down. You think, oh God, they look as though they were from a fairy realm. They've got pointed ears, and some of them have got attached pointed ears because they bought them, but some of them do seem to have natural pointed ears, you know. But there were stories years ago about the little people being wiped out. Yeah, there's the Georgian Pilgrim. And I was just about to say something else about
being wiped out.
Yeah, there is also a link with the American presidency with Glastonbury. Now, just outside of Glastonbury, there lived a family called Adams, Henry Adams, and he and his family fled what was called the dragon persecution of Somerset. And it's been written up in American history since as the dragon persecution of Devon. It wasn't. It was the dragon persecution of Somerset. And this was in about the 1500s, and he went to America with, I think, again, I'm going from memory, 9 possibly of his 10 children. And the dragon persecution of Somerset was wiping out people that had esoteric knowledge, if you like, or knowledge of how nature works. I mean, there are old farmers now that can look at signs of nature and tell you when a storm was coming, and things like that, because they would know the signs. And anyway, this particular family spawned the second president of the United States. That was John Adams, who was the first vice president to George Washington. And you've also got then the same family was Samuel Adams, who was partly responsible for the Boston Tea Party and so on. And John Adams was instrumental, I believe, in helping to create the Declaration of Independence. So one would like to think that the essence of the greater area of Glastonbury has permeated everywhere else. So maybe, the land speaks to people. Yeah, that's said to be the grave of King Arthur. I don't know if you can home in on the sign there, Jeffrey. They are that's said to be the site of King Arthur's tomb. Now, whether there's truth in that or whether there isn't, and whether some people say that was a ruse because they were looking to raise money to restore some of the ruined abbey after a fire, don't know. But there are stories that a coffin was found that contained the bones of a very tall man, said to have been about 8 foot tall. Now, you might think that's nonsense, but there have been bones around the world that have been discovered that do say people of gigantic stature existed. So who knows?
Indeed. Yeah. So says site of King Arthur's tomb in the year. You have to zoom in a bit more.
1178, I think, is it? Or
1191.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The bodies of King Arthur and his queen were said to have been found on the south side of the Lady Chapel on the 19th of April, 1278. Their remains were removed in the presence of King Edward I and Queen Eleanor to a black marble tomb on this site. This tomb survived until the dissolution of the abbey in 1539.
See, now in 1539, that was when Abbot Whiting was, he didn't want to, he refused to hand over the treasures, all the treasures that were requested by the king, and he paid for it with his life. And he was dragged up the Tor and, well, they say hung, drawn and quartered, but I believe it was quartered, then hung and whatever. Quite a gruesome thing to happen to anyone, let alone somebody who was around about, I think he was about 80 and had been a great leader of the monks and a very holy individual. And his, I think they honor his, I'm not sure if it's his birthday or his death day in November. And again, like I said, I'm going from memory at the moment, trying to bring life to some of these stories.
Well, you're doing a brilliant job. Yeah.
I mean, I do remember that the ruins of the abbey were just literally left for a long time, and somebody did acquire, I think it was a fireplace, and it was whoever this gentleman was, I think he had a shop at the top of the high street, and this fireplace was left outside just for ages and ages and ages. And his daughter, if I remember rightly, got really fed up with it, and she said to him one day about, it's time to get rid of it. And so he put it up for sale. I think it was for 3 shillings. No, I think he wanted 3 shillings and 6pence. And again, I'm going from memory, so this will tell you how long ago it was. And 3 shillings and 6pence would have been, 3 shillings in equivalent decimal money today would be 15p. And somebody, I think, offered him, he wanted 3 and 6pence, I think, and somebody offered him 3 shillings and he refused. And so anyway, it stayed there a bit longer. And then I think his daughter arranged to have it brought inside and broken up to make part of a staircase, something like that. And when they broke it up, they found a cache of gold coins in there. I'd love to find the book I found that information in and put together some more of these stories. They're just magical.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, I think we might be coming near to the end now. We've exhausted Glastonbury in the night. That was brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on at short notice. Right, I saw Andrew ask if there's any crop circles in Glastonbury. I know there's definitely not. There's no space.
Well, no, I don't think I've ever heard of any. Wiltshire does tend to be the area that gets most of them, you know, but there are all sorts of, you know, we get other signs and things, you know. I'm sure that, you know, I mean, you look at the word tour and I think you can get an encounter instead of an encounter and things like that, you know. So, yeah, who knows? We keep you posted if we see anything else, you know. I'm sure we have a few visitors from different places. Who knows?
Okay, well, thank you very much once again for stepping in at short notice, and I think a lot of people have learned more about Glastonbury. So yeah, so brilliant. So have you got
just check out what I've said. You know, some of it is memory and whatever else, but there you go.
Have you got a poem that you would like to finish up on?
Oh gosh.
Hey,
yeah, go on, Jeffrey.
just a sec. People always hear about the Glastonbury Festival, yeah?
Yeah.
So I just want to bring people's awareness that it's not actually held in Glastonbury.
No, it's Hilton, which is about 8 miles away.
So we go from here, Glastonbury, to a place called Pilton, yeah? And that's where the actual festival takes place. So
I think it used to be known as, didn't it used to be known as the Pilton Pop Festival or something? And they do have a pyramid stage that looks towards the tour.
Yeah, there's a tour there.
Yeah, in alignment. But yeah, did it say it's 11 miles away on that?
No, I think it's 8.
Yeah, no, but what Jeffrey put up, I think it said different to what we.
Yeah.
No. But yeah, it's a good 8 miles away from Glastonbury. So, and everybody thinks, oh, we've been to the festival, but we haven't.
And what I also find interesting, because I mean, it was only held a couple of weeks ago, is that, you know, a lot of the cafes shut in town because they are obviously catering at the festival because it's more profitable for them. But also when the traffic comes out of Glastonbury, you think it would come through the town, and it doesn't. It's forced to bypass. So, you know, it's an incredibly quiet time here. And you would think that the town that is given the name to the festival would benefit from people coming here on the way or on the way back to top up their shopping, to get their supplies, maybe to have a look around the area. But no, they don't.
Spoil sports.
Yeah, they get ferried off elsewhere. Or they get, you know, traffic diverted to go elsewhere, which, you know, some people might think is a blessing, some people might think not. But it just seems absurd that the shops and the businesses here don't really benefit from people passing through.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so 8 miles away from Glastonbury is where the festival is held. But I mean, I know years ago when they used to come through, you'd meet all sorts, and they'd come back with mud and tents and God knows what else. and obviously at the festival, loads of tents get left behind because they just buy them for the festival and they don't want to be carting them all home, and lots of bits and pieces. So
I've never been there.
No,
but obviously I know plenty of people who have. So yeah.
Oh, so I just had a little fly past, and he went.
Oh, I did wonder what that was.
Right. Yes. No, I've never been yet, but you never know. But I want to be in the VIP bit. I don't want to be traipsing through fields trying to find a tent.
Crikey, no. I don't know how they manage. I truly don't.
And who ends up in what tent, eh? Oh, okay.
Yeah, this weekend it's another event in Somerset, isn't it? The Healing Weekend, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that's well, you know a lot more about that than I do, but I mean, yeah, it's going to be awesome. It's
We're going tomorrow.
Wildlife Park at East Huntsville near Bridgewater. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So over to somebody else to tell more about it.
Well, while Jeff is looking, well, we helped Bill Harrison start off in his back garden many years ago. And that's where we met Jeff and been long-term friends ever since. But it's just expanded and expanded. And now Elaine does it on her own with all her team. But there's just so much to see there. Tents and marquees, and there's drumming, there's chanting, there's dancing, there's crystals, there's meditate, everything that you could expect at a festival. Is it the healing weekend? Highly recommended. I think it's £5 to go in through the gates of Secret World. And then you go in through the next bit. And if you want to do workshops, it's £10 for the day. And you can do as many workshops as you like. And there's usually 3 running at the same time every hour. So you can do all sorts of things. And what we find is we go around and we meet people and we chat, and then we have some lunch, and we miss a lot of the workshops. So we come back the next day and do some more. So plenty to see. So just definitely high, and it's really affordable, but there's plenty to do, to see. Dancing, drumming, fluting, fairies, and all sorts of magic there. So on that note, I think we will say once again, thank you very much for stepping in at short notice, and time to put the kettle on for a cup of tea.
I think so. And just in case anybody is wondering what this is here, I headbutted a bookcase the other day unintentionally. So there must be a book on there that I have to read. But yeah, no, I was incredibly lucky. It came up like an egg shape. I've just got a little bit of bruise coming out now. But I was very, very lucky. I didn't do any more damage. So, that's why I've got what looks like eyeshadow up there above the eye. So, Anyway, thank you for, inviting me to stand in. Hey.
Well, thank you for standing in.
All right, cup of tea time. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, and tune in next week for another interesting guest. And we'll sort Jamie out another time to get him back on, because he's put an amazing PowerPoint together. Yeah. And it'd be so lovely for him to share different numbers game altogether. I've never met anybody that talks about numbers the way that Jamie does. So, okay, thank you, everybody.
Yep, and don't forget, folks, it's taken some time, but not only the shows, 175 shows, but they're all either on YouTube as Radio FM 88 Australia, but they're also on Spotify. So you can go Radio FM 88 Australia. So, yes, so all the shows in full video. Another venture there. Of course, you can do Facebook, but YouTube, and YouTube's pretty good because it gives you the playlists as well as the live shows, and obviously there's some benefit for people. And it's also on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcast, Google Podcast, and iHeartRadio Podcast. So all the shows, 175, are all on those particular venues. I would recommend the YouTube and Spotify. Spotify's, I can't believe it. It's only been on for 4 weeks and it's just gone gangbusters. Also, we've got a new app. So the new app is a web-based app. It doesn't have to go through Google Store or Apple Store. Bloody brilliant. These young kids, they really know their way around computers, isn't it? So if you jump on where I've got on my name down there, see that download 24/7. That's the radio station. You can be anywhere in the world. You can listen to the radio station 24/7. And of course, the music comes from all around the world. And we have a different animal on the air. It does a time call. So if you just jump on to radiofm88.com.au/listen-app, it's got the written instructions for Android users and Apple users, but they're a little short, 1 minute, 30-second little video clip. And the first part's Android, and then you skip and you go into the Apple. Really plain English, designed for people who don't have much knowledge about tech It's really easy. Yeah. And then it's on your mobile phone.
Excuse me.
You know, I got to tell you, Jeffrey, years ago, I wrote a little poem. What was it? It was something about if you've got Bluetooth, you need to go to the dentist.
Oh, true.
You know.
What's
Yeah.
Diane put? I understand that for the first 3 years it was held at the foot of the tour before it was banned, and then it was moved out. Oh, what, the festival?
Oh, I don't know about that.
No. Yeah. No, anyway. Okay, time for a cup of tea, folks.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Bless us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
All right.